turn them on, and we'll just stream this until somebody comes and hits stop, right? So got a notification. Faith Rich is live. Subscribe to the channel. Just one step easier. Speaking of that.
Hello, everybody. Let's all get to a table. Let's fill up the tables, because we're going to need to be around the tables. We can fill them up. We can put 12, 14. It doesn't matter.
We apologize for the confusion.
A little confusion, but
we're trying to get our act together.
We just want to make sure everybody's at a table right now. So, and you can crowd the tables. But when I say tables, we can't have one at a table. We got to have the tables full. So this, fill this one up. Right here, we can crowd in around here. Why don't you guys crowd in around one of these tables? So we can crowd in. We can crowd in. There's an empty chair right here. That's for Lou, probably. So.
There's one up here. Carol can come in.
Yeah, we'll have to figure that out. Okay. So we didn't put them on the base. We didn't put them on the chart. We'll have to figure that out when we get there. The table's got to be full.
Welcome everybody again. We apologize for the confusion. We weren't trying to. Actually, that was your first test and you passed. You're doing good. Welcome. We're glad that you're here. Thanks for giving up a Sunday afternoon to be here. This is perhaps one of the most important meetings we've ever had in the life of our church. So it means a great deal to us that you're here. We're going to share our heart for our future. We're going to share kind of where we believe God is leading us, and that really excites me. And I'm excited that you want to be a part of that. So thank you for being here. We're glad that you're here. Maybe we can begin with this prayer. I'd like for us to say this together. It's a little hard to see. But this is a prayer that Mike has written along with our prayer team, Field Bridge to the Future. So it's going to guide our work over the next 6 weeks together and even beyond. And it's already meant a lot to me. So I think it's a great way to begin to get us in the spirit of where God wants us to go. So if your eyes are fully focused and you can read this, let us pray. Lord, I am constantly amazed by your faithfulness. You bless me in ways I don't anticipate, and I am grateful. Help me use all you have given me for your glory and to bless others. Show me the next steps and empower me to trust you with the rest of the journey. What do you want to do through me, Lord? Amen. I want now to introduce Tom Melzoni. Dr. Tom Melzoni And, Tom has a lengthy amount of experience working with churches like ours. But one of the things that stood out to me about Tom's resume is that Tom has helped organizations, not just churches, organizations of all shapes and sizes, from the Salvation Army to universities, and even vice president of a seminary. So we're real fortunate and blessed to be able to work with somebody with Tom's experience and expertise. And Tom, in his career working with churches and organizations, has raised over $750 million, which I find incredible. That's almost $1 billion, and that's just a huge number that I can barely wrap my mind around. But we're blessed and fortunate. And beyond Tom's credentials, what I've said from the beginning, if you've been part of this leadership experience, is that God led Tom to us. That when we interviewed with Tom and we consulted with him, it was God opening a door for us to be able to work with Tom Melzoni. And I felt that as long as I've gotten to know Tom, and certainly excited that he's here with us today and helping us with this journey together. So let's welcome Tom.
Thank you. And we're going to play flexibility. We have to deal with space challenges all the time in every different church. So our objective is to make sure that we've got the tables full, and you're over full now. So as we move through the journey today, we'll probably be a little more flexible in setting up some A and B groups. So just bear with us as we go. But around your table, I'd like to we have leaders at each table, and I need you to be the timekeeper, because everybody gets 2 minutes or less in what we're getting ready to do. Everybody around the table gets 2 minutes or less, so somebody, keep time and wave at them when 2 minutes are up. I want you to answer this question. Share a defining moment for you at Faith Bridge. Share a defining moment for you at Faith Bridge. Maybe you met your wife here, or your husband. I would say maybe you had your funeral here, but you're here. But there's something special that's happened in your life at Faith Bridge. And I'd like for each of you to take 2 minutes or less, go right around the table and do that right now. Thank you.
more than just a white congregation, because so that's one reason I wasn't really a big fan of
Hit this ring. We come here. Brandon, come on, let's move on to the next question.
Letting you know.
Well, I didn't even know that part. I didn't. The American Legion, and I'm going to bring Rugby Hill. I'm sure.
Give you about 3 more minutes. 3 more minutes.
But most of my moments are related to the youth, which is how I've gotten involved in the church. And I will say, I'm not even a member of Faith Bridge. Part of that is because my wife is a minister in another church.
Part of that is
Okay. I didn't know that was a thing. But I did have a moment a few moments ago where I began to feel that this was more of my church home than the Methodist. And I'm not sure what exactly it was, but the culmination of a lot of defining moments with the youth where I know it's uncomfortable, particularly if you sat near the youth. It can be really uncomfortable to distract. But we count it as a joy. And my moment that kind of brought me to that place was part of the church. Participating in a partnership where the youth had an opportunity to come to church the best they could tolerate. Moments like today, where
Okay, 1 more minute. 1 more minute.
a youth who I know does not believe in Jesus takes me to church. That makes it for me. When somebody who's in this experience of, I know that God is working in him and in our years of life. And he'll say things like, I'm an atheist, but I live like a Christian. You know, things like that. You know, that tension, like you feel like this is great, the time that Kyle can give to things like things that were all
All right, looks like I think most of you finished, so thank you. What I'd love to do right now is just from each table, just have a couple of you just share, with all of us your defining moment. Not every one of you, but 2 from each table maybe. So since I've only got 1 microphone, we'll start right here. Who's going to be the 2 from this table? Gotta go.
Can we just sum up?
Just share your.
Okay, mine wasn't as interesting as everyone else's.
Share your name so everybody knows you.
I'm Shannon. My defining moment was I did meet my husband here, but also Faith Bridge does a lot of different types of sermons, as we're aware, and I was able to speak about my passions in life in one of the sermons in front of all the congregation, and that was really powerful for me.
Okay. Now sum up your table.
We had a lot of good stuff that was talking about how a lot of our people didn't necessarily put Faith Bridge events, like singular events that were super important, but the fact that throughout their lives, in their highs and lows, Faith Bridge was always there for them, supporting them through those events in their lives, and that's a big thing for a church to be able to do and not feel like you have to leave, fix yourself, and then come back to church.
Awesome. About this table, who's going to share? Or should I pick somebody? Who's going to share? Raise your hand. There you go, Jill. She just got you out of trouble.
I'm Jill, for anybody who doesn't know me. As I said, the very first Sunday that we had come, our two friends that we'd known for months had told us, you gotta come, it's a great church. And when we came in here, it was unbelievable, the casualness. I'm stuck in a scooter, so it's not easy for me to dress up like you do at most churches. And then when Ben came on stage and started talking, I looked at Tom looked at me, and we said, wow, we are home. This is where we need to be. And here we are.
Someone else for this. Yes. Yeah, go ahead, son. You can do whatever you like.
Okay. Well, what I had shared is a defining moment of taking communion from a child. Gave me a new experience in humility. So that was a defining moment for me at Faith Bridge. For the group, very similar to the first table, a lot of the church being here for life experiences, the church accepting you as each of us are, the level of authenticity and the continuing journey through challenge in our lives to become more like Jesus.
All right, this table. Who's up? Yes, everybody's looking at each other. Oh, there we go, I do.
Yes, please share that.
Hi, my name is Marcy. My family and I, we moved here to North Carolina a year and a year and a half ago-ish. And we've been searching for a home church and have missed that home church feeling that you get. And we came last week. My son is friends with another boy here named Kevin, and Kevin invited Ramses to play soccer. Yeah, he actually put that there. Kevin. He told me, Mom, I put Kevin. So Kevin then invited him, he's like, dude, you should come to our church. And Ramses that night, the week before, me and my husband were talking about, we need to find a church. And I said, I want you to look and pick one, because I haven't had the best luck. So we came last week, and we came in, and I just felt awesome. And I was like, I'm scared. This is too good to be true. So I prayed, and I said, God, if there is a reason for us to be at this church, that song 10,000 Reasons is very special to me. I sang it to my father as he passed last year. So that was the very first song in worship today. So that was, and I put confirmation, because that was my confirmation of him telling me that this is where I need to be.
Where'd you move from?
Wisconsin, most recently, yeah.
I could tell that you was from the suburbs.
Well, we're originally from Florida, so.
Okay, who else at this table? Who else at this table will share? What's your name?
I'm Sonia. I've been coming to Faith Bridge off and on for a number of years. Ever since I've been here, I've seen many people. This is a family. Our pastor, I remember talking to him one morning where I was in a immersion room, and he said, Sonia, he said, your church is family. It's Faith Bridge's home. And for all of us, I believe they agree with me that this is the whole church is family. It's home. And it's peaceful, accepting of others, loving and caring. And I want to thank all the main people at Faith Bridge, the pastor, associate pastor, people that help run Faith Bridge. thank you very much for all you've done for me and made it a home that I haven't had in a long time.
All right, how about this table? Yes, I see that head. I guess you're it. You were looking at me too intently. Give your name.
I'm McGregor, a recent graduate at ASU, and the defining moment I had here was, it didn't happen that long ago, it was about a month, maybe a month and a half ago. I made a covenant commitment here, and that was big for me because Faith Bridge was a church that I was a part of throughout college off and on, but I was really involved with the Wesley Foundation at App State, and a lot of my time was given there, so I never really felt super connected here, but definitely knew people here, and always felt welcome and had people that would ask how I was doing whenever I was here. And so getting to make that commitment here and getting to feel like I'm more of a part of things here now was huge for me. And we had a lot of cool other stories shared at our table with like baptism and communion with children, and yeah, just like the way that this church is, like the way it started and the way that it's grown since then, and some really powerful things, and a committed group of people that I think really want to be here and want to continue to see it grow. So I don't know who else wants to share.
Who else? Yeah. Yes. Yes, sure. There you go. Thank you.
I'm Justin.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm Justin. And a little bit what McGregor was saying, and Sandra too. So we joined the church, and our son was baptized all on the same Sunday. So we kind of used the term one-stop shop. That was a one-stop shop on Sunday. But that was a really special moment. And similar to what Sandra said, not only was it special in our lives with our son being baptized, and that was kind of the first. We've been visiting the church for about a year or so, but that was the first kind of like time where, okay, we are in the Faith Bridge fabric now. But all the kids did baptism that Sunday, and that was a really, again, a sign of this is where we need to be, as we now have another son who was just born a couple weeks or so ago, to see the kids serving communion and knowing that our kids will be a part of the vibrant children's ministry that's here, and again, them being put up to where they're serving all of us communion was a really kind of special thing to be a part of. So.
Awesome. I was at a church a couple weeks ago, and in this part of the in this part of the journey, one of the children actually was at a table and said, "We joined the church when our car got baptized." And I asked, "Well, tell me about that." She said, "Yeah, they did a car wash after church." So I love hearing these stories. Who's going to be here? Yes? Yes? You're it? Okay. They volunteered you. Give us your name.
I'm Tomas. I guess I got voluntold. So. Yeah. So, like I was telling my table, I think for me is just seeing the church not be a predominantly all white now. Like, there's a lot of Hispanics and just people of like different races that come to this church now, and that has been for me like what's like been my defining moment is being able to see Faith Bridge come together and be more of like a mixed family, which is good, because then my youth guys feel comfortable coming because they're not the only Hispanics or people of color. And then there's a family, I think, from Lenore who comes up just because they feel that this is the place where they feel fellowship, and they feel like this is a community. And so yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, one more. Who else? You're it, Mike.
This lady right over here is Carol Green. She was one of about 13 people who started meeting in a garage that became Faith Ridge United Methodist. After church today, I went up to her and I said, "Carol, I'm so glad you're here. And I'm so glad what you did in your part in starting a church, because I had nowhere to go. I had no church that I could find and feel comfortable. And somebody suggested I come here who doesn't even attend this church. And I found the Lord afresh and anew after being out of church for 25 years. And it's because of dedicated people like Carol, for one, and the many dedicated people I find here living for Christ. It inspires me.
Amen. Thank you. Right around your tables, if we just spend just a couple of minutes just praying, and then when your table's finished, we're going to take a 6-minute break. So we'll time the break, but then come back and we'll move on to the next part of the program, but spend a couple of minutes praying, and then as you're finished, take a 6-minute break. Thank you.
Thank you for stretching me.
Thank you for so much for people that have come in
Okay, this is a 3-minute warning. A 3-minute warning. So. You have a 1-minute warning, a 1-minute warning. Yeah, those out in the hallway, if you'll be gathering back in. If you guys can help us move them back in, that would be great.
Shannon, can you run for this next one?
Yes.
Yeah, those out in the hall, move on back in. All right, those out in the hallway, move on back in. 30 seconds. Okay, everyone, thank you. Let's bring our focus up here. As you're going to see, we're going to be taking numerous breaks, and we're going to keep those breaks short because we want to get you out on the end of this time too. So bear with us as we move through. This next portion, if you could just focus up here, your pastor is going to be sharing his heart. You know, well, what a wonderful church you have, and a wonderful church keeps moving forward. And so the challenge of what that looks like. And then we're going to ask you to participate after you hear from him in some responses to what you've heard this morning or this afternoon. So, Pastor Ben, bring it on.
I guess that means
There you go.
I guess that means I have a heart if I have to share my heart. I want to start by, I really do believe, that God is leading us in a direction. And I want to start with kind of the theological framework for where God is leading us, because I believe if we understand that, then it'll help shape kind of where I believe God is leading us. So I want to begin with a story, and it's a story that I hope you're familiar with because we've been talking about it for perhaps about the last 9 months as we've been asking God for clarity in our vision. So it's a story that I learned from Alan Hirsch. Alan Hirsch is one of the leading mission thinkers in the world, and he tells a story about ranching. And he says there, in America, we typically think about ranching cattle. So we'll buy a piece of land and 40 acres, and we'll put a big fence around it so that our cattle will be in our property. Our cattle will have a boundary. Other people's cattle can't come into our property because we have this fence, this boundary that exists. And he says in his native land of Australia, they think about ranching in a completely different way. They don't think about their land and put a fence up, put a boundary up. They just dig a well. And they know that their cattle are not going to drift far from the well because of how great the source of life actually is. So you can think about it. If the X is a cattle, right, you put up a fence, then your cows stay in. Other people's cows can't get into where your cows are. There's a boundary. Whereas if you dig a well, right, cows are free to come and go, but they'll keep coming back because of how rich the source of life actually is. So we tend to think of this, and Alan says people are grouped in similar ways. We can group people in similar ways. So Alan calls the fence, the boundary, a bounded set way of grouping people, and the well grouping a center set way of grouping people. And it's helpful to think about this in terms of church. And our leadership team really has been asking, aren't we really more of a center set type of church than a bounded set type of church? Aren't we more of a church where we believe that the center of everything that we are is Jesus, the Christ? And if we really believe that to be true, shouldn't we strip away the boundaries that are keeping people from coming to the well, keeping people from coming to Christ? So you might have noticed a few changes around Faith Bridge this year. We ask ourselves, what are those boundaries? What are keeping people from the center, the well, the Christ? One of those was name tags. We took away name tags because we said, you know, if you're coming to Faith Bridge and you're a guest for the first time, you walk in and you're thinking, who are those people that have name tags? They're inside the boundary. However they got there, they're inside. And I'm on the outside looking in. So we wanted to strip away that boundary. So as soon as you walk in the doors at Faith Bridge now, you're part of the center set of Faith Bridge. One of those that we're still trying to work out the implications of is church membership. That could be a boundary. If you ascribe to a certain set of beliefs, then you're in the club. You're inside the fence. You belong to the bounded set that is Faith Bridge. But if there is no membership, then you belong to the center, the Christ. And as we're asking ourselves these questions, how do we remove the boundaries? We also wanted to ask the very important question, a very real question. If Christ is the center, if Christ is the well, then how can we help all people get to the well? How can we help, more than just moving the boundaries, how can we move people forward to the center, to the well? And Jesus helps us with this. Jesus helps us understand this kind of thinking. In John's gospel, Jesus is about to die, and he's trying to teach his disciples that he's going to die. And so Jesus says to his disciples, once I'm lifted up, I will draw all people to myself. When I'm lifted up from the earth, I'll draw everyone to me. So Christ is already at work at the center, reconciling all things to himself. Christ is already there, wooing, pursuing, actively reaching out to all people, drawing people to himself. So what we've decided as a church is that's the kind of church that we want to be about. The kind of church that we want to be is a church that points all people to Jesus. A church that takes away the boundaries for people that might find it difficult to find their way to Jesus, take the boundaries down, but also point people to Christ, who is at work drawing all people to himself. So this next season of ministry, as we bridge to the future, as we look for where God is leading us, what we're doing is we're helping all people find their way to Jesus. And all means all. So no matter where you're from or what you've done or where you've been, and that's part of the brilliance of a center set type of thinking, is that, right, we really don't care if you're way far away from the well or if you're really close to the well, right? We certainly desire you to be close to that. And we're going to help you. If you're far away, we're going to help you draw close to the center, draw close to the well that is Christ. So think in terms, as we move forward, think in terms of how we as a church family can help all people find their way to Jesus. We're taking away the boundaries and we're helping move people closer to the Christ who is at work, reconciling all people to himself. So that provides the theological framework for why we're doing what we're doing. And it's so important because it shapes who we are as a church. And we're going to try and accomplish that 4 ways. We're going to keep the Faith Bridge language, connecting, nurturing, and serving. And we believe that's an important part of who we are. We want to be able to connect all people to Jesus. And we really want to do that through life-changing worship. You heard stories around your table of how your lives were changed. A lot of your defining moments were changed because you showed up at Faith Bridge to a worship service and you encountered the risen Christ. And your life was transformed and your life was changed. So when we talk about helping all people find their way to Jesus through worship, we really want to double the number of people who are actively engaged at Faith Bridge over the next 2 to 4 years. Because we want all people in our community to experience that same transformation that you experienced. We want to help all people find their way to Jesus. So we're going to be intentional about helping people find their way to Jesus in such a way that we intend, through connecting, to double those who are connected to Faith Bridge over the next 2 to 4 years. Nurturing has a similar type of goal ahead of it. We want to have 50% of our people involved in some sort of nurturing group. As best as we can tell right now, we have about 25% of our people actively being nurtured and discipled through Faith Bridge. And so we need your help figuring out how we can accomplish that. But as you're figuring that out, as you're asking God how to do that, think in terms of maybe you're really close to the center. You're an ex that's close to the well. You're really close to Jesus and you feel like, all right, I've been really discipled for a while. How can you, as somebody who's close to the well, go out, further away from the well, find somebody who's not as close to the well, and help them find their way to Jesus? It becomes more of a one-on-one type of nurturing model than say, we're going to put you all into one big class and hope that it works out for you. And we saw an example of that today. Actually, look, we can watch that again. Tomas's story is an example of this, of one-on-one, of JB going and saying, look, come with me. I know who Jesus is, and I want you to be a follower of Jesus. Let's actually watch that again, because it was so powerful.
My name is Carlos Tomas Robles. I don't really know who I am. All I know is what I want to do. I've lived in Bradford basically my whole life. My dad's name is Savino, my mom's is Michelle. I grew up like any other kid around here, you know, like your dad's always at work and your mom's always busy, so you don't really have someone you can lean to, so you go outside and you just do stupid stuff. My dad left us, and then my mom got a full-time job where she was working like 70 hours a week, and I never saw my mom, and the only person I had to look up to was my brother, who at that time was on, you know, some hard drugs, and so I just started hanging out with people that, in all honesty, were pretty stupid. I mean, the reason why people join gangs is they just want to feel wanted and loved, and you know, that was sort of the reason I started hanging out with the groups of people, because like I just wanted to feel loved, honestly, and I just wanted to feel like my life had use. Started hanging out with them, did a lot of dumb stuff, you know, started doing drugs, kept going downhill and downhill, and then I was just like, I hit the bottom. The first time I met JB, I got to talking with him, and he was just like, rode up on a bicycle, didn't believe in driving cars, super hippie-like hair, and then he was just like, look, I'm wanting to hang out, you know, one day a week with a lot of guys from Bradford, and he was just like, do you want to join me? And I was like, well, sure, why not? At that point, I was still making really dumb decisions. I was still drinking, and I was still smoking, but you know, just from meeting JB, it's just like, well, he's probably gonna leave us, so why should I care? And you know, as he kept coming back, I was like, this dude's for real. What made him a lot different is the fact that, see, the only churches we knew about, you know, they just tried to ram it down your throat, just like, if you don't do it this way, you're going to hell. And you know, JB kept it real. He was just like, look, man, the way to do it is just like, strive to be like Jesus. That's what it really means to be a Christian. Love everyone, because Jesus didn't care what skin color you had, you know, what your your background, whether you're poor or you're rich, like Jesus all loves us the same. But sometimes we're like little children that are just falling, and he's just like, get up, keep trying. You're so much closer.
So when we talk about nurturing, this is what we're talking about. When we're talking about helping other people find their way to Jesus through nurturing, this is the kind of discipleship model that we're talking about. And we acknowledge that discipleship is a journey. You probably look back at your life of being a disciple, being a follower of Jesus, and you realize that at some points in your life you were really close to the center, you're really close to Christ. And then maybe at other times you drifted away from the well. So when we talk about nurturing, we want to make sure that we are drawing all people to Jesus as much as possible, and as many people as possible, so that that journey can continue, so that you're continuing over and over again to find yourself coming back to the well, find yourself following Jesus closer and closer to the source of life. The serving goal, I think, is perhaps our most ambitious. And I don't know how in the world we're going to accomplish that, but I'm pretty excited about it because this is a huge challenge. We want to reduce the poverty rate in our county to below 20% in the next 2 to 4 years. You know, God has placed this all on our heart. The poverty rate in Watauga County right now is about between 26 and 27%. It's almost double the statewide average, which for us is unacceptable. And you know, we have an incredible opportunity because right now, through the work of Casting Bread, we're serving over 1,000 people a month. So we have to take the next step. Figure out how God is going to use us to not just help people with food relief. That's important work. But how can we begin to put a dent in the poverty rate of our entire county? We also are planning to send a mission team to Kenya over the next year. And it fits in with helping all people find their way to Jesus. Because what we want to do is we want to be able to partner and build relationships with communities across the globe, even in Kenya, so that we can continue the work that God has called us to do. And the hope would be that we could learn something about the development work that's taking place in Kenya and bring that back here. How can we then continue the work of development and reduce the poverty rate in our county? So this all leads to how are we going to bridge to the future? And this becomes incredibly important for how we look at the next phase of our lives, the next season of ministry that God has called us to. We have to eliminate the current debt that we have on the mortgage. It's such a huge piece of this next plan. We owe $477,000 on the building that we're sitting in today. So over the next 2 years, we're going to ask God prayerfully, how are we going to eliminate this current debt that we have on the mortgage? Because here's where we believe God is leading us. If we really want to double the impact that we're having in our community, if we really want to reduce the poverty rate in our community, right, we need expanded facilities in order to do that. We really believe that God has given us a vision for the High Country Community Center. And that's a huge vision. And we want to be able to get there. We can't do it without God's help. But we also can't do it with the current level of debt that we have on this building. So in order to bridge to that future, the future of a High Country Community Center, a future where we can double our impact, a future where we can help all people find their way to Jesus, we have to bridge to that future by eliminating our current debt. And I realize that's a huge challenge. If you put it all together, we're looking at a goal of over $1 million over the next 2 years that funds ministry and eliminates our debt. And that number, to me, I'm just being honest, that number sounds outrageous. It sounds like there's no way that we can possibly accomplish that. And as an individual, it is outrageous. I can't give $1 million. I can't do that. But what I know to be true in my own life is that every time that I've taken a leap of faith, whether it's through discipleship, whether it's through giving, that God has shown up and God has provided for me. I want to share just a practical way that that's happened. When Jenny and I first got married, we've been married almost 12 years now, we made the decision when we got married that we were going to be a family that tithed. And we were in seminary at the time. Jenny was working as a secretary in one of the departments at our seminary. And I had a part-time job while going to school full-time. And altogether, if you combined all the monies that we made through yard sales and everything else, we made $18,000 a year. And we made a decision when we got married that we were going to tithe 10% of that $18,000. And we thought, there's no way. $1,800 out of $18,000 sounds like a lot of money, and it absolutely is. And now Jenny and I are having a different conversation. We've been tithing for the past 12 years. We've been giving away 10% of our money. Now we're trying to take a step to go from a tithing family to an extravagant family. God is stretching us and asking us as individuals, as a family, what does it mean for you to take that next step in your discipleship? And we're wrestling with that. It's tough. We don't know how we're going to make it work. We just adopted 2 additional kids that went through last month, and it's tough and it's challenging. But we look back to 12 years ago, and we see how God has been faithful each and every moment of our lives. And we know that God is going to continue to be faithful because it's what God has called us to do. Let us pray. God, we're asking a question about what do you want to do through us? And that's a tough question. We believe that you've placed a high calling on this place called Faith Bridge. And we can't do it on our own. We can work really, really hard. We can chip in a few extra bucks here and there. We can try our best to make disciples. But without your help, we're not going to accomplish much of anything. We want to have a kingdom level impact on this community. Not just a Faith Bridge impact. Not just an individual family impact. But we want to help all people find their way to Jesus. The same Jesus that you sent, your Son, who modeled for us what a life of sacrifice looks like. So we lean on you. Guide us. Challenge us. Equip us. Show us where you would have us go. Show us not to lean on our own understanding, but to trust in all things in your ways and your will for this place, so that we can be the people that you called us to be, so that we can live into the vision that you've given us, so that we can bridge to the future, to help all people find their way to Jesus. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Wow. Pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. You do have a heart. All right, we're going to do something now that we did in school. Around your tables, I want you to just, there's the ABCs, A, B. So what we're going to do is we're going to have you just sort of letter off. A, B, A, B, A, B. So let's do that right now around your table. Just start somewhere. Somebody start with A and go right around, okay? All right, let's see how many of us remember. How many of you are A's? How many of you are B's? Now we hope for the next 6 minutes you can remember your letter. We're going to take about a 6 1/2 minute break. All right? Then when you come back, I want you to look for a table that has your letter on it. So if you're an A, you look for what table? A table. I mean, that's so elementary. If you're a B, you look for a B table. 6 1/2 minutes, we will begin the next exercise.
If you're a B, please try to get up here.
Great story, my friend. You got 2 minutes. Some of you are A's, some of you are B's. Find your table. Yeah, we need our B leaders to go to B tables and A leaders to go to A tables. So, yeah, thank you. If you were a leader, you stay your original letter. I'm sorry, my fault. If you're an A leader, go to your A table. If you're a B leader, go to a B table. If you don't know what you are, just pick one. Looks like you're all back in, and we'll just go ahead and move right through then. So here's what we're going to do. We have leaders at each table. So would the leaders raise your hand so I know who you are, that we make sure we got a leader at each table. All right, so we have leaders at each table. And they have some questions that they're going to ask. And I'm going to give each table about 5 minutes per question. And so you don't have to worry about time. I will move you on to the next question. So, I'll probably give you a 1 minute warning so you can finish up. But what we're looking for is just your answers. You're not looking for anybody to come to a decision. Not looking for the table to vote. Just what are your answers? And then what Lou is going to do this afternoon, he said he's going to take all these answers and type them up for us. And if he has your email address, we're going to send them back to you so that you can know what the whole group said. But we'll also have some group discussion. So you got 4 questions. So this exercise is going to take somewhere around 20 to 25 minutes. So you ready? Everybody understand what we're doing? Go.
What is your you're going to have same small percentage of people who are doing the work outside the churches. So that's not
One minute warning. 1 minute warning. Okay, be moving on to your next question. Be moving on to your next question.
library.
1 minute warning. 1 minute warning. Be moving on to your next question. Be moving on to your next question. One more minute on that question. One more minute. All right, be moving on to the next question. Be moving on to the next question. let's pause a second. Everybody focus up here for just a second. I'm gonna give you one more question. I'm gonna let everybody answer this. It sort of was stimulated by this wonderful table. Let's go into Tomorrowland. I live in near Orlando, and Disney World's there. I do wear a Mickey Mouse watch, in case you need to know that. But in Tomorrowland, you know, we're experiencing what tomorrow? So let's assume that somebody walked into the church today and just said, okay, your $477,000 debt or your mortgage is paid off. All right? What would you do next, and why would you do it, and what would you do in it? Sort of a who, what, why, when, and where. I learned that in school, I think, in journalism. Your mortgage is paid off, and so you know, what would you do immediately, realizing you no longer have to pay off that mortgage? What would be your who, what, why, when, and where? Let's spend 5 minutes answering that. All right, go. We'll give you one more minute on that question. And that is the last question. One more minute. Okay, let's finish up. Finish up. All right, let's do this. Focus up here. We're going to do some interaction just to see if tables were consistent with each other. Obviously, table A and table B had different questions. So we have numerous questions that we want to go over. We're not going to spend an hour on this, but just a few minutes. We'd like to bring it back together. So I'd like to go to this table right here. Would you read your first question and just share your answers? Who's going to do that?
Okay, so our first question is, what is your vision for Faith Bridge? And so we talked as a group about more vital youth programming for high school youth, providing more connecting opportunities for the college age students that we have been getting over the years, and to expand or develop and then subsequently expand outdoor ministries to capitalize on the location.
Okay. Some other table. I think most of you had that question, so add to it real quick. What did this table say? Add to that.
It's a question, what is the vision?
Yeah.
Okay, I have some answers.
Okay. And even if you didn't, Mike, I'm sure you'd come up with some. So.
To be a serving church. Very good. To minister to our community and beyond. To bloom right where we're planted from there. Well, that's enough.
Lord, fill my mouth with worthwhile stuff and nudge me when I've said enough.
At our table, in addressing our vision for Faith Bridge, we focused on, I'm just going to sum it up as one big happy family. And that happy family is as far as anybody can reach and drive to get here. And it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what you do, we're all one big happy family, everybody's welcome, everybody's comfortable. And we want it as diverse as we can get it.
Good. All right, next. This table. Anything new?
We talked about youth and college programs growing, some of our physical space needs, whether that be with Casting Bread specifically, also with parking, that being a part of the plan moving forward as far as physical spaces go. Talked about building, I know we're not calling it membership, but building membership for lack of a better term at this point, and subsequently with that, finding ways just to get more people plugged in. So whether that's through youth or college programs or just other ministries for people to engage with as opposed to just coming on Sunday mornings. Once we get them here, we need to find ways to engage them.
Okay. Love your haircut, man. I love your haircut.
Some of ours are a bit of a duplicate after some of them, but again, make disciples of ourselves. Have a small group that fits each person's needs. Ben talked this morning about having each person feel nurtured, and the nurturing occurs, one of the places the nurturing occurs is in the small groups. So if you have small groups, you have to have a small group that people want to be a part of. And we have many here, but we probably could have more. Make sure folks are aware we are here to support them. So there are a lot of people who come on Sunday. Make sure that they're aware that when something happens in their lives, when they go through a stressful time, that they can reach out and somebody will meet them in the ER, or we'll talk to them at night if they're going through a family stress time.
Good. Great. Thank you. This table? Anything new to that?
Deepen relationship of prayer with Jesus, the relationship aspect, not the asking for. Feeding spiritually Boone and Blowing Rock that were strategically located. We had the deepened service, and then deepen connection beyond our initial wonderful hospitality.
Okay. And this table, who's going to shout it out from up here? Anything new?
One of the things with growing that we not lose what's good with what we've got when we get bigger. So we maintain the reasons that attracted many of us here, despite our size. And the other was consistency, so people can count on people getting support and spiritual direction here, and continued diversity.
Okay. Go to your next question. Read it and answer.
The next question is, how can we better meet the physical and spiritual needs of our community?
Okay.
Well, by growing, we would reach more. Look at neighborhoods. Ramsey's gave an idea from Wisconsin that they went to neighborhoods, asked how they could help, and maybe rake leaves, clean gutters, things that people need, and so to reach out with people in that way in our community. To continue with things like worship in the park, go where people are, to offer spiritual leadership. And then offer the skills of our parishioners as a way to help people get out of poverty. One of the ways is maybe offering through our church financial management, how to get insurance, some of those things that all of us struggle with in our daily lives.
Okay. Who else had that question? What other tables had that particular? That's the B table, right?
Yes.
All right, back here. What? Any additional answers to that question?
We talked about also offering like household management, in addition to the financial management, sort of parenting skills, English as a second language, spiritual needs. People want to come and hear some people preach and keep up with that aspect of things. Travel, JB already has a bus, he picks people up, but other people in other communities may need help getting here.
Great.
Any additions to that over here?
Adding to that the potential of a mobile casting bread, where they would be taking food to communities that can't come, maybe expanding hours to working families. Also expanding things like in the park, at Blowing Rock, but not just by our pastors, but getting people to lead in communities where there are needs for things of that sort. A huge spiritual need is in our giving as a church to really grow in that area. And then a generational focus, not just, we obviously want to keep up our youth and children and strengthen that, but also at the same time looking at all of the generational needs in the community.
All right, take your next question and answer it.
What do you believe are the most important keys to continued sustainability for us as a church? Giving, children's ministry, passion for doing God's will together, a deep passion for God's word, generational ministries that are vibrant and vital, equal ministry to all areas. Relational connections are signs of health, and church softball team.
Amen to softball. I love that part. Yeah. You had this question, so.
We talked about that we have to have a well to keep the cattle here, and it's up to us to be that well. How do we get people to come to want to spend time here? We have to offer people something that they want. People want to feel connected to their community. People want to be able to give back. We need to give them opportunities to do so. Also, spread the load a little bit. Engaging everybody in the congregation and not having the same 20% do 80% of the work. Sorry to be a negative Nancy there, but.
No, there wasn't a negative. Any additions up here to that question? Okay. Your last question, table B. Let's start with you. You had your last question. What was it?
What is a church are we doing right? We're telling the old stories of the Bible in a new way where people can relate. We are giving children the spotlight as opposed to shushing them and putting them back in the nursery. We offer food and coffee the minute you walk in the door. We have several community outreaches like Spooktacular, Easter Egg Hunt, Hospitality House, Care and Share Day, Casting Bread Ministries, Service in the Park, JB's program. That's enough.
Over here. Just shout it out real loud.
Initial hospitality, we are asking what we can change, which they saw as very positive. General openness, the covenant with casting bread, using skills of the congregation, and then that one sort of bled into the worship team used to be a basic whatever, and we've, as the church has grown, different people's skills and gifts, horns, etc.
Okay.
We have a lot of vision and commitment. We have a lot of commitment.
Okay. Any additions from this table? What are we doing right?
Attracting young families with children.
Okay, attracting young families with children. From the table A's, what are we doing right that they've not mentioned? Anything else?
Welcoming. That's what I didn't mean to go over you.
Okay, good, good. Okay, good, good. Let's go right here. You had a second question. Table A's. We're into the A's now. Read your question.
Oh, I need both hands, right?
You might need three.
How can we create a greater culture of generosity in terms of time, talent, and treasure? How can we create that? And we came up with several ideas. One would be testimonials. As we hear people testify about things that are happening or having like today, testimonials were inspiring, and it creates the desire to want to be more like that. There was another question or answer here, learning more about each other and finding people who are doing nothing, that 80%. But we find they have talents and have abilities that they would like to utilize, but they don't know how going about and saying, can I do that? They want to be asked. So I thought those were two.
Okay, how about this table? Add to yours. Add any additions? Yep.
Some of it's very similar. One of the first things we said was, well, maybe we need to just teach generosity. Not only, but anyway. And then, secondly, provide opportunities. Provide opportunities for people to work, lead, contribute, help foster more involvement by providing opportunities and asking for more involvement.
Okay, next table, any additions?
Fairly similar. Biggest thing we talked about not being shy about what our needs are. So whether that's from a financial perspective, whether that's from a spiritual gifts perspective, the way people get plugged in, don't be worried about stepping on people's toes, find ways to plug people in.
Okay, great. Any additions from this table?
Sure. I taught middle school. So I think one of the things we talked about, which was really kind of keeping it focused, keeping it simple, and getting us all involved, not having a lot of distractions and trying to do all things for everybody, but basically say this is who we are, and do a lot of very focused types of activities and keep people engaged.
So ask your next question.
So next question was, what have you heard thus far that excites you? And what we said unanimously was paying down the debt.
Okay. Let's just open that up to everybody. What have you heard today which excites you? What have you heard? Just Just speak loud.
Well, this was my favorite question, and it's because we had so many great answers. What was really inspiring to us was, for example, the fence and well illustration Ben gave. I will never forget that. I won't soon forget the testimony of what is happening in a community where Spanish-speaking people live, and they're finding a church home where they can come and be a part of our church. And we talked about the excitement of big goals. What we have been presented is a big goal. But that can be something that you say, well, I can never do that. But we can add the God element and get excited because it will happen as we follow our pastor's leadership. We can do this.
Okay. What else have you heard which excites you? Just anybody, yell it real loud. What? Anything you've heard?
Reducing poverty.
Reducing poverty. Okay.
Community center.
Community center. Okay. What else? Which excites you?
Paying down the debt.
Paying down the debt.
The debt could be worse, but it's not. It could be a lot.
I call it a mortgage. I don't call it a debt. I call it a mortgage. So, what else? Which excites you?
Increasing our children's ministries.
Okay. Increasing our children's ministries. What else? Which excites you?
I think a room full of positive thoughts that we've had over the last 2 hours.
Great. Room full of positive thoughts. Great.
That we even have this.
Bringing families together.
That we're looking to expand. I mean, you know, when I came 5 years ago, they had just built this building because we thought it would fit our needs. With the idea of expansion, but we never thought expansion would come this soon.
Yeah. Okay. Great. You didn't think it'd come this soon. I got good news for you. There wasn't any parking spots left today. I mean, there really wasn't. This is a little bit of a negative, but I don't want it to sound that way. But there was one car that came in and left.
No, I came in and parked off.
No, there was another car that came in and left because they could not find a parking space. So you know, that there's good news. I mean, your parking spot's full. So you can work on that. I mean, that's a great challenge to look at out there. If you get them in the door, they're welcome. But you got to get them in the door now. So great news. All right. Anybody else? What else was positive about what you heard, or what you excited you? Okay. Last question. We had a last question. Absolutely, Mike.
You know, that really was sad news when you mentioned the car. But I got here late today. I always park over on the other side. I practically turned in. Now I'm going to park over. It's raining. And I parked over here. I made that person lose his parking space. I think we ought to have more people starting to park over on the other side.
You confessed it was your fault. No, guys, you know, all that says is that, you know, the joy is you got great opportunities occurring, and it's just refining, you know, when you realize, okay, family couldn't find a parking spot, next week they will. You know, next, because you're going to solve that challenge. Okay, the last question that was just not on the paper, was one that actually this table created, was your mortgage is paid off. All right, we're going to assume that. And quite frankly, it is paid off because, you know, God's going to help you pay it off. What's your vision? You know, what's your vision beyond, now that that's taken care of? Just shout it out real quick. We don't going to take a lot of time, so just shout it out. Break new ground, okay? What else? What else would you do?
Larger food pantry.
Larger food pantry, okay? What else would you do? Okay. Space for kids, all right?
What we can do ministry-wise without looking at more debt.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and what our good friend right here said, and he was wise, very wise. We have to take all the 30,000-foot suggestions and bring them to the landing spot. What does that mean? You know, when we talk about more outreach, what does that mean specifically? When we talk about children's space, what does that mean? When we talk about food pantry, you know, what does that mean? Because there's a cost involved. I mean, everything we want to do, what does that really mean from a time, talent, treasure perspective? What does that mean from an actual ministry perspective? What does that look like? Because that's what becomes very inspiring is, all right, this is what we're going to do, and this is why we're going to do it, and then you swallow real hard, and here's what it's going to cost. You know, that's when you're landing the plane on the 30,000 foot. So thank you for all of that good input. And we are going to get some information from you in just a little bit, Lou. I haven't forgotten, you know, what we need to do. But we're going to take another 6-minute break. You can come back and sit with the original group if you like, or if you like your new group, you may stay with them. But then we're going to come back and we're going to have about 25 more minutes and we're done. Okay? So take a 6-minute break and we're going into the last quarter. Two-minute warning. 1 minute. 1 minute. Let's be moving back to our tables. If you could help us with the group on the outside. Let's be moving back to our tables. Thank you. All right, let's gather back together. Let's gather back together. All right, everyone, let's move back into focus. Hello, hello. For this moment, you may want to open up your Bridge to the Future magazine that you have. And there's a chart about halfway through. There's a chart that looks like this, about halfway through. All right, you see a chart, if you would go there. Everyone there? One of the questions you discussed was creating a greater culture of generosity, both obviously in time, talent, and treasure. And so for a few minutes, we're going to just concentrate on treasure and realize that that's an important part of our discipleship journey. As you see the bridge, you know, one of the steps that we take in our giving journey is steps toward the concept of being a tither. And for at least Faith Bridge, the word tithing means a tenth of your income. And what does that look like in my life from a perspective of faith? And jumping in that deep or crossing the bridge that fast, you know, we have to take steps sometimes. And so that's why the steps are there. For your church, over the next 2 years, the challenge is to fund just the ministry as you know it, not attempting to reduce the debt in an accelerated fashion or reduce the mortgage in an accelerated fashion. It's going to cost about $600,000. Now, I want you to rest a second. While that's a big number, if you don't do anything, you're probably going to raise $600,000 because you're already giving at a rate of about $300,000 per year. All right? So in a simple math, since you're already giving at a rate of $300,000 per year and you think this is a 2-year journey, 300,000 times 2 is what? Most of you passed math, so that's $600,000. So you're already doing that. So when we look at funding the ministry as we know it, if things just go along as they've been going along, then your ministries probably will be funded. All right? But to accelerate the journey, to work toward reducing the mortgage and to work toward the vision beyond, then you see some other benchmarks. You know, benchmark 2 is $800,000. And, you know, after my study with you, I thought that, wow, you know, in just who you are as a people, within your own abilities, without an extraordinary amount of effort, but certainly with some effort, you probably could reach $800,000. You know, just assuming that the 600,000 is pretty normal as far as giving. Then you see $1,077,000. Now that would be an extraordinary God-sized jump, I promise you, for this congregation to reach at that level. It's going to require some steps of faith that maybe you haven't taken yet. You know, you just haven't taken those steps yet, and that's okay. That's why this is a journey. It's a wonderful faith journey. And so you look at the chart below, and this is my best estimate based on the patterns of Faith Bridge, your giving patterns. This is my best estimate at what it's going to take for us to reach $1,077,000. And you look at the chart, and it's hopefully self-explanatory. We need one family to step up their giving, to give $150,000 over the next 2 years. That would be $75,000 a year. We need, you keep looking at that, we need 3 families to consider $50,000. Now remember, this is not new giving. This includes what you're already giving times 2. So you go on, we need 4 families to give $10,200. So let's just say families already giving $5,000 a year. So that would mean $10,000 already. And so for them to go to $10,200 probably wouldn't be too hard of a step, right? So I want you to think in terms that this is money that I'm already giving times 2, and then what would I, you know, step up from an accelerated perspective. Does that chart make sense to you? And here's what I'd like for you to do. No one's going to tell you what to give. All right? There's no one going to buttonhole you or, you know, come to your home and say to you, this is what you need to give. That's not going to happen. This is just a chart. It helps you see how, if everyone jumps in, that we can get there. If everyone will cross the bridge, that we can get there. It's not about equal giving, because not everyone can give in equal amounts. But it's about what we call equal shares, or maybe even equal sacrifice. That's not a great word in today's culture, the word sacrifice. So, you know, if we want to call it radical giving, everyone become radical in their giving. So that chart shares with you. On the other page, you see the bridge. And when you start looking at who you are, this may be for many of you the first time you've ever made a commitment to give to your church. You may have been giving, but the first time you've ever made just a covenant commitment to give to your church. And that's a great step of faith. For many of you, you're going to become what we call intentional givers, that because you are making a giving, because you are making a commitment, you're becoming intentional about your giving. You know, before you showed up, where's that $5? And I'll just put that in. We call that an occasional giver, but now you're going to become very intentional. For others, when you start looking at how much that you're giving, wow, I've become a tither. Maybe didn't even know it, just by the fact that you're bumping up your giving. And so that's why that's there, just to help you see where you are in your spiritual journey. Has nothing to do with numbers, has everything to do with, where are you in your spiritual life. And then the other is just sort of a way you might figure your gift, just a worksheet. That's all it is, just a simple worksheet in your own home to think about it. Then on the next page, you see sort of an estimate of giving card. And you'll be getting one of these, over the next few weeks. But you get to see what it looks like already. And there's boxes there. You don't have to put how you're going to give. If you just want to put in your 2-year total, that's perfectly fine. If you want to share, if you're going to give it weekly, and I did notice they spelled that correctly, W-E-E-K-L-Y instead of W-E-A-K-L-Y. If you want to give, from a perspective of weekly or monthly or annually, that's just totally up to you. Just ways the church would know, how they might expect cash flow. That's the only reason, for those types of numbers. Any questions on that chart? Any questions on that? For all of you, there's 3 things I'd like to just mention to you when you start thinking about your giving. There's 3 phrases. Do away. Say that with me. Do away. Say it again. Do away. Is there something I could do away with? Is there just a habit in my life that I could just do away with? I like to use the concept of coffee. I mean, I heard anybody that walks in the door, you give them a cup of coffee. But if you buy a cup of coffee at Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts or Gourmet Coffee House, it's $1.50. And so, is there a habit like that you might do away with just to be able to think through your cash flow? I had one sweet gal in one church. She was drinking 5 cups of Dunkin' Donuts coffee a day at $1.50 each. And she had no idea she was doing that. That was just a habit she had. And so in her thought process, she realized, I could give up a couple of those cups. Well, she still got to drink 3. All right? And she was able then to contribute $3 a day. Did it affect her cash flow? No. It affected her lifestyle. We call that lifestyle stewardship. How do I change my lifestyle to become more generous? Just a lifestyle shift. So do away. Delay. Say that. Delay. Is there something I could delay at another church? At a meeting similar to this, a lady went home from the meeting and called the pastor and said, I got so excited about the phrase delay. And so the pastor said, well, just tell me about that. She said, well, just today, I signed a contract to have my bathtub, redone. And on the way home, I realized I could just cancel that. I could delay having my bathtub redone for a couple of years. Because I can take a bath in it. I just wanted it redone. All right? That was a way she was going to adjust her lifestyle to be able to make a gift. And so, maybe things like that in your life. Do away, delay, or do more. Say that. Do more. I have a number of wonderful senior adults that I've loved through the years that they went to Walmart and got a job. And they stand at Walmart and they say, welcome. And one of them walked up to their pastor in one church and said, now, Pastor, you pray for my health, because the only way I'm going to be able to make my commitment with my giving is to have this job. For them, that was what they did. Doesn't mean you do it. But you think through the phrases. Do away, delay, and do more. Because giving can be fun. In fact, it should be fun. God loves a cheerful giver. And in this journey over the next few weeks, we're just asking you to take a cheerful journey into how you might cross the bridge. and just take another step, maybe two, maybe three steps in your spiritual life. And then obviously it translates into what does that look like from a financial perspective. That's your challenge. I want to share with you a story. I shared this the other night with some of you. I was asked to help a church in another state. Happened to be the state of Kentucky where I was born. And the church was a very large mega church. And they were planning to relocate. Now your annual income is what? $300,000. Just to give you a comparison, their annual income was $6 million. All right, so big difference. Their need to build their new building was $31 million. Big building. Well, after we did a study with them, we told them they could raise about 18 million, but they said we need 31 million. We said, we think you can raise 18. They said we need 31. You know, I said 800,000 here would be a wonderful, wonderful journey for this church. And you've said, you know, to reduce that debt and move on, we need $1,077,000. Get the difference? Just so you're understanding the plane. In the midst of the journey, some people had already turned in what we call advance commitments, just like we're going to ask some of you to do. Just as you feel led over the next couple of weeks to just turn in a commitment card early so that we might just have some gauges as to where we are. So in that church, some advance commitments came in, and some people had made some very large gifts. One day, in walked a sweet young lady. She was from birth. She had some challenges just because some birth issues. She handed a letter to her pastor, and it reads like this: Dear Pastor Russell, you know the challenges I face in life, and I earn a meager living. Each Sunday, I joyfully and with thanksgiving share a tithe to our congregation. I'm serving on the prayer team, Mike, in our church. And I've been praying, what is it that God could do through me? And I don't have much. As I kept praying, something came to my mind, and I went to my safe deposit box and I pulled out the most prized possession of my life. It's a brooch my grandmother gave me. I had it appraised, and it appraised at $1,800. I want to give that. Now I want you to think with me from a need of 31 million, from a human perspective, what was $1,800? I'm going to tell you, it was huge. Because we asked permission if we could read her letter to the congregation. They had 5 services on the weekend, so we read it in each of the services. A number of families walked up to Pastor Russell and said, we have already turned in our cards. We gave out of something we could afford. She gave out of something she could not afford. Would you pray that our gift will be equal to hers? And we'd like to buy that brooch. 458 families bought that brooch. On the day of announcement at that church, they announced $31,168,000 had been committed to the glory of God. Wow. What did we tell them? 18 million. What did they allow God to do through some extraordinary sacrifice? Through an inspiration of one person sharing their humble story. If you went to Southeast Christian Church today in Louisville, Kentucky, they have a number of buildings now, but there's one building there, the first one they built in their relocation. If you walked in, you would find a little plaque on a wall, and it says, this building was built by a brooch. Symbolically, those 458 families on Christmas Eve wrapped that brooch and took it back to that young lady. And they stood outside singing Christmas carols as they handed it to her. And they had on it an appraisal of $13,168,000, because that was the difference in what we said and what they allowed God to do through them. Faith Bridge, you know, this journey is not an easy one. It's going to require you stepping up and at levels that you never dreamed about. It's going to require you looking around. It's going to require you looking up. It's going to require you delaying and doing more. It's going to require some of you with assets to do something of extraordinary nature and give those assets. If all of you bridge the future, you'll get there. Tom, in the shower today, God inspired this man. I just told him I was glad he took a shower. So, Tom, would you come and share with us?
Keep my hair clean.
Yeah.
I do it from right here, and I prefer to do it without that. I've coached for years, and I can speak.
Since you're a coach, I always obey my coach. Do whatever you say, brother.
Well, I certainly can't match that story for inspiration, but I was asked to share my story and our story, my wife Dana and my story. We both were, I guess, kind of go back to the beginning. Dana and I both were brought up in completely different states, but in lower middle class families, Christian families. And we both went to church regularly every Sunday, loving families, good Christian loving families. And both of our families taught us how to give when we were young. My mother and daddy would give me a dime or they'd give me a quarter every Sunday to put in the plate at Sunday school when it came around. And then when I started earning some of my own money, I was encouraged to do that, and I would say I was probably an occasional giver at that point in my life. But I was taught that, and when Dana and I met and got married, we decided that we wanted to raise a Christian family, and we wanted to do right by the Lord. So we probably were occasional givers as we went along on our journey. One of the things that probably held us back is the fact that I've always been very anxious about money. I grew up in a family where my father was anxious about money, and a couple of things that I didn't realize until I got older really probably shaped my feelings about money. I'll share one very briefly with you. I don't want to keep you here too long, but my family didn't go on vacations very often, but one year we went on a vacation, a beach vacation, with two other families. And it was supposed to be a 2-week vacation, and after a week, my mom and dad told us that we needed to pack up because we were coming back home. And I guess they just didn't realize how closely I was paying attention or what I was listening, but I heard them sharing with each other that it was because basically we didn't have the money to stay for another week. And that just mortified me that my friends and their families were still going to be there another week, and I felt like we didn't have the money to stay another week. And I think that probably helped shape the way I felt about finances and things as I went through life. But Dana was always, she and her family were always a great influence on me, and I feel like I've got a pretty good heart, so I always try to at least give occasionally. And as we got a family and our children were coming up, we continued along that path. And then I kind of suffered a little bit of a faith crisis, is what I call it, where I just kind of got disconnected from the church for a little while. We just went through a time where we weren't going to church on any regularity. Ran into Marianne Romanat one day at the Wellness Center, and I was talking to Marianne because I knew her from the days when we went to Boone United Methodist. And she told me about Faith Bridge and what they were trying to do. And so we weren't one of the 12 originals like Carol, but we were probably number 13 and number 14 when we started. We've been through the entire growth process and tried very hard during those years to give about
of our time and our talents and our treasure. And as we went along, we became intentional givers. And we have pretty much been intentional givers all along the way. A few years ago, as most of you know, we lost our son. And it was just a terrible tragedy in our life. And we loved Faith Bridge before, but the way God and the way Faith Bridge reached out to us and supported us, and you talk about feeling God's grace and understanding God's love, we didn't have to do anything but grieve. This church did everything for us. We had people at the house answering our phones. It was just, I can't even put it into words. I'm sorry that I'm just not capable of doing it. But I think something changed in us at that point. And I think for the first time in my life, I look back over my life, and I've always had a little bit of a rocky relationship probably with the Lord, maybe at times contentious even. But I've always just kind of kept my head down and kept plugging along and tried to tell myself that's faith. And that's what it ended up being. It ended up being faith because as I look back over my life, numerous years or months or whatever years later, I can see where God was working in my life, and He was blessing me, and I may not even have realized it at the time. And I think as tragic as losing Tommy has been for our family, I think it changed my feeling about a lot of things. I realized things didn't matter so much anymore. Anxiety over money didn't really matter so much anymore. That all that was just superfluous. I'll use a big word. Okay. I realized it was just all extra. So about 3 weeks ago, we were very, very blessed, and our son was recognized as a National Fallen Firefighter. And we received a bereavement gift from the national government because of that. And it's a God thing that came along to us just at the time when Faith Bridge maybe needed us to give back. And Faith Bridge ministered to us and was so good to us, and it was an opportunity. It has been an opportunity for us to give back. And so we're planning. Well, we've already done that. We have already tried to make it a financial donation back because I realized that all that stuff doesn't matter so much anymore. And we've also talked about increasing our giving level from intentional to tithing. And I don't know if we can go further than that, but we'll see. But this church is special to us. We've been here almost since the beginning, and during the worst moment of our lives, this church was the best thing that could have been there for us. And we are excited about the opportunity to give back and to hopefully help this church to be in a position where it can help even more people and be there for even more people as they, for whatever their needs are, as they move forward. And that probably wasn't as eloquent as it needed to be, but that's my story, and thank y'all for taking a moment to listen.
Very eloquent. Very eloquent, my friend. Amen. Everybody has a story. And over the next few days and weeks, I hope that your story emerges and that you're willing to share it. Because as we share our stories, you heard testimonials. As we share our stories at Faith Bridge, we inspire each other as a family. And so that's a challenge I'm asking from you. Ben, if you'd come stand by me. And would you come, our two wonderful staff members. You love these guys, don't you? And their families. You are blessed.
I get the same reaction.
Yeah. You at least love one of them, right? No, you love these two guys. And here's what we're going to ask you to do as we conclude. There's a 3 by 5 card on your table, so if everybody would take one. And if you would like to receive notes from today's meetings,
On one side of that card, would you put your name and your email address? So if you just do that right now, so that Lou will be able to send you notes from today's meeting. So put your name and your email address. So if you just take time to do that right now. If you don't want to put notes, just put your name. We don't need your email address. If you just put your name. And then we're going to close with something fun, but also something challenging. We're going to have you all form a circle, and our two ministers are going to come, and one's going to collect a card from you, one's going to hold the microphone. All right? But I'm going to ask you, once you finish the email and name, I want to ask you to answer this question, and I want you to do it in tweet format, meaning very short. All right, we're not asking for a paragraph, we're asking for a word or a phrase. A word or a phrase. And you don't need to explain it. God is speaking to me. And then God's speaking to me. God is calling me to. God is asking me to. And I want you to answer that in one word or one phrase. Could be to pray more. Could be to volunteer. Could be to be more committed. We're not looking for anybody to write down a number of finances. If you do that, that's up to you. But that's not the intent of this. This is as a result of what you're sensing in this room today. God's speaking to you about stepping up, praying more. I mean, with whatever it is that comes to your heart, I want you to take just a few minutes right now and let God speak to you, and then I want you to respond. And then, yes, we're going to stand up. And these guys are going to come, and I'd like for you to read your answer. And if you wish not to do that, you can just drop your card in the basket, and they'll move on to the next one. I know some people can't speak, and that's just okay. But we are the heartbeat of Faith Bridge. I mean, we're it. So we want to take time to do this. So just in the next minute or two, I want you to do that. You need some index cards? I need some index cards.
If you need a card, raise your hand, please. Anybody else?
And when you're finished writing your card, let's just form a circle wherever we can right here. Big circle, maybe right up here in front. Yeah. So when you're finished, just come on up. While you're coming, there's been another face in the room today. His name's Tom Norwood. Tom is from Davidson, North Carolina. And he came all the way up just to observe this process. So he's a wonderful friend, colleague at Horizons. And thank you, Tom, for participating. You're welcome to come be a part of our circle as we close out.
My name is Ramses Massis, and God is asking me to use my talents in ministry.
studying the Word.
Prayer. Prayer.
Be more intentional.
Invest in Him.
Be more committed.
To pray more.
Reinvest in ministry through Faithbridge.
To give sacrificially.
To open up and trust.
Make commitment.
Be consistent.
Relationship.
To do all I can.
To volunteer. To pray.
Listen.
Do more in church, like communion, and raise funds for the church.
Do something.
Pray.
Listen and nurture.
Pray.
Pray more. Be a disciple.
Listen daily.
Discipline, hence disciple.
And to be.
Why don't we close with singing the doxology? Praise God.